Gonzalo and Paul asked technical questions today, and I thought I'd answer both on one video. Gonzalo was asking about throttle linkage on his 220 and how difficult it was to take it off. That's probably due to the fact that it's old and rusted and not lubricated. And as you can see, this is how easily the ball, you got your ball right here and you have your socket, and they should go snap on just as easily as that and come off. And what Gonzalo's probably running into is the lack of lubrication inside here, and you got a little snap ring in there, and that's what pops and allows things to go on and stay on. Now then, what you may run into, Gonzalo, is you've got to take a screwdriver and pry things off like that, but that's all you do is run into probably rust and corrosion. And time to change these out. Now then, Paul was asking about the choke not operating on his 190 SL. So we got the 190 SL carburetor here, and obviously we've already got this. You already know about this. You got your choke lever that operates, and your butterfly's got to come up and down and close properly, and then spring back. This one's hasn't been serviced, so it's a little slow, but it does spring back. Now then, what you may be having happen is this lever right here on the side can come off of its off the half moon or D-shaped choke lever right here. So a little drop of oil in here helps make things run smoothly, and just make sure this has not popped off of here like that. Now then, the other part of the choke is your fast idle, and this screw and jam nut is what sets your fast idle, because what you're doing when you operate your choke, you are actually moving this lever right here, which then moves your throttle lever, and that's what opens and physically opens the carburetors and gives you your fast idle. So it's essentially a version of you putting your foot on the gas pedal. All it's doing is you're just pulling on the choke cable, and it's opening the throttle. And what controls that is this screw and the jam nut. And the factory says that you are supposed to have the clearance on between the jam nut and the lever is supposed to be 15 thousandths. Now then, you can see it is not 15 thousandths right here, and so what we're going to do is screw this down. This is our idle screw, and so as we screw the idle screw in, you can see the relationship, and all of a sudden we can now get this feeler gauge through here. So what I'm trying to show you is that when you set your idle speed, you are changing the relationship between the jam screw and the adjusting screw and the lever right here. So you've got to come back in here. Once you get your idle set, you got to come back in here and adjust the clearance right here. That's assuming this screw is not falling out. When they fall out, you get absolutely no choke activation whatsoever. And what you've got to do is come in here with your thin screwdriver, and you try to unscrew the jam nut, and then you get in here and adjust this where you have 15 thousandths clearance. Of course, when this is installed on the vehicle, you cannot get a feeler gauge in here, and you can barely get in here and work on this screw and jam nut. When you open the throttle all the way, you can get in here a little bit like this. It is a real difficult operation, and so since you can't use a feeler gauge, you just have to estimate where the clearance is right here, the gap, and then move your choke up and down and see how much your throttle moves, and then you can adjust it to where it works as good as it's going to work for you. Now then, something else that's part of this relationship is this bracket right here, which impinges on this screw right here attached to the second barrel throttle. This is the old style here. There's a newer style. I should have gotten that out. That has a screw here that you undo, and this jam nut, this set screw goes in and out, and then you can set the screw right here and hold this in place. And so what you've got to be aware of is how much clearance you have between this pin and this pin right here, and that can also vary with how much what kind of idle speed you have right here. And what you want to achieve is, you see a little bit of movement right there, we actually can reduce that down to almost an imperceptible amount of movement. And what happens is, when this opens up all the way, the throttle opens up, the vacuum opens up your second barrel, and as you release the throttle, that pin right there artificially closes the second barrel. And you want just a little bit of play so that you don't have any binding. And because what can happen is, if you screw this down too far and contact that pin right there, the more you screw that down, you actually are artificially opening up the first barrel. So the more you screw this down, the more it's going to open the first barrel. So you may have a high idle because that screw is not adjusted properly. So I hope that helps you guys out, and let me know the feedback on YouTube. Good luck. Thanks.